This thing here is seriously? Hello? Hello? Okay, what is this? This isn't like Instagram from 6 years ago. We're not doing breakfast and dinner. And what are you doing, Carly? We're not, well, like, I get it. We're not professional, but this is even by our standards, this is poor.
Carly
this is really
can't come
poor.
to the phone right now because she was too busy eating delicious dinner. That's what she was doing. Look at that bit of meat, like the true Scandinavian that I am.
Carly was chowing down some meat. That's why she couldn't stick her head into the frame. Great. I mean, even by our appalling standards, Carly, that would have to be a new low. We have just plumbed a new low. Congratulations.
A new low, me eating delicious smoked lamb shank. Oh, got so
we start the show. I'm about to have a serious conversation about the marvels of modern technology and what it's like to be living in the science fiction future. And you're just busy scoffing what looked like food off the floor. The way that plate is on the floor next to you, and you were competing with the dogs for what was left of that lovely looking lamb, whatever it is, shoulder, leg.
That is outrageous. Now my eyes watering. I look like I'm crying. I'm not. I'm not. It's great to see you catch up to the game. I bought that Osmo to take to Japan, and it was amazing.
They are good. I was in two minds because they're about to come out with the 4, and this is the Osmo 3, but it doesn't seem like it's a massive upgrade. And yeah, it's definitely got its limitations. I bumped into some of them while I was filming. I had some issues with getting the camera to do what I wanted it to do, and I had some issues with the audio turning itself off. Well, I had issues with the audio turning itself off because when it's all set up, the little audio thing's literally sitting off here, and my finger tapped the touch screen, and somehow that means mute. It's like that's an incredibly dangerous thing to make it mute. But anyway, it muted it. And yeah, so I lost a couple of minutes worth of audio from that and a few other teething problems. But I tell you what, that is absolutely nuts. The picture quality, as long as there's a bit of light for it to work with, the picture quality is really amazing. I could travel to the US with 3 of these and do 3 camera interviews. It's absolutely insane.
They are very, very good. I got so much amazing footage of Japan just with that thing. And it's also, you get the tiniest little lapel mic. You're going to hello as an influencer. And it just Bluetooth connects. But anyway, no one cares about technology. They're here for us to talk about very pressing issues. And I love a pun. Shanks for your coverage of Farrah. Get it? Get it?
That's what passes for a microphone these days. I'm sorry. We have to we are living in the most ridiculous science fiction. It is absolutely insane. It is, but it is like we take it for granted. So you've seen that skit. I think we talked about it before on the Oddcast. Everything's amazing, but nobody's happy. There's a comedian that does this amazing skit, and it's set in a plane, and he's flying, and some other passenger loses their shit because the Wi-Fi is not working on the flight. And he's like, dude, you're in a like aluminium sausage screaming through the sky at 850 kilometers an hour, and you're mad because you can't get on Instagram. Like, dude, calm down. But it's like that. Like, just stop and marvel in wonder at the stuff that we call normal today.
Yeah, even with the technology thing. So, I've been doing the whole AI thing. This week, I've just finished my AI book, and my whole thing is I'm trying to stay on top of it. And I'm looking at all the different aggregators and all the different models and just trying to learn. And today, I kid you not, just because I've been immersed in this space for a while now, I was doing stuff for you and stuff for me at the same time. And I had like 5 different programs open, all simultaneously doing things. I felt like, that scene in The Matrix where they have like all the computers and it's just one guy with a keyboard and everything's like moving. That was me, except all my robots were working for me. And I was just like, thank you. Like AI, and it's like early days of the internet. Like you cast your mind back to like 1995 when the average user got the internet, and you had the old Google and GeoCities and AOL and all that sort of stuff. And it was so like basic and terrible and mishmash. And you think about the internet we have today and how you can like order something and have it at your house within 15 minutes. You can order a taxi, and people are like, oh, that's not the internet. I'm like, yeah, it is.
Oh, yeah.
That's an app on the internet.
You know what the biggest limiting factor is going to be very, very soon? Because, we're going to have all the like neural synapse tie-ins, and we'll just be able to, no, it'll all be happening out of your brain. The biggest limiting factor will be someone who is going to have to develop the algorithm that figures out which thoughts and impulses it ought to act on and which ones it really shouldn't. Because let's be honest, if every single one of us had an omniscient, omnipotent AI that was acting out every single thought that floated through our head, there would be a brief period of bloody chaos, full of all kinds of degenerate, who knows what, and then civilization would be over in a very, very short amount of time. Literally, the biggest problem they're going to have soon is going to be figuring out which thoughts the neural synapses need to filter out.
Well, you've seen the latest, right? We've got, I always make this joke, and sadly, it's so accurate. It's not really a joke anymore. But whatever new technology comes out, they're going to either learn how to fight war with it and kill people, or how to fuck it. All right? And AI is not disappointing. But 100%. Did you see the latest? In Australia, Pornhub has been cracking down. And so if you are a regular of Pornhub, guys, unfortunately, you do have to verify your age, or you could just type porn into Google and it pops up anyway. I mean, I'm not just trying to freak you all out. I actually thought about doing a story on this, and I was like, I don't need that in my search history because I'm going to have to search up a bunch of things to like prove the point, right? I'm like, this is the difference between you and I. You say that, and then meanwhile, G and I are like, oh, can you get onto RedTube? I'll try Pornhub. See, my thought was it's the same as the under 16s ban. It's like all of the platforms that comply. Okay, sure, the under 16s get kicked off. Even that's not gone very well. But let's just assume. What do? They go finding a platform that isn't going to comply. They end up on some Russian, thing or something out of Eastern Europe or whatever. It's like, well, that same thing's going to happen here. Like a bunch of people that were sitting there on the relatively tame, comparatively speaking, less abuse and less, sex trafficking and so forth websites that are more well known. Well, now they're searching out like Russian dark web stuff. And it's like, well, have we made the world a better place? I don't think it's necessarily a great thing to have pornography, piped into every single person's home. But I'm fairly sure that history teaches us that banning things makes them worse, not better. I think we've had a few lessons on that. You just make it more incentive for people to go and look up, like, oh, what is it then? Do you remember the website? I know I've mentioned this before, but do you remember the website rotten.com? You told me about it. So I'm starting to have memories of it, just vicariously planted by your vivid descriptions of how your older brother would try and traumatize you with stuff on rotten.com. You are implanting false memories into my mind. Well, like rotten.com was one of those first like sort of, dark websites that anyone could access because it was the wild, wild west back in those days. But on there with some truly like shocking things like the Jeffrey Dahmer murder photo, crime scene photos, the terrorist or the anarchist cookbook, the Tupac autopsy photos, like all sorts of things, right? And I could access that at 10 years old easily, without needing anything other than just to type it into your browser. And you think about millennials who grew up with that. Everyone knew it was there, but most people went, I don't really want to look at that, so they didn't. They didn't need to ban it. They didn't need guardrails. The more you add all those extra lines, it's going to make people go, well, now I definitely want to see it. Yeah. What does that look like, So far, we've had you eating off the floor next to your dogs, and we've been discussing access to porn. This is a great show. It's going well. Can we turn our attention to the issue of fuel? Because this is a pain point for all of us. What? Before we get into it, I just want to bring up the topics that we're talking about. So we are going to talk about we got to do that. People acting like lunatics because it's COVID all over again. So everyone's stockpiling fuel, which, what could go wrong? What could go wrong? We're going to talk about the Strait of Hamas. Am I right? Strait of
Iran?
Hamas, not Hamas.
Oh, the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
We're going to talk about One Nation and the Farrah by-election because you were there on the weekend. Mm-hmm. And we've also got our special guest, Diba is back. He's got a microphone. He's back, everybody. I was there at the protest yesterday, and I even was invited to speak, which was really cool. And I have to say, easily, as someone who has been to a lot of protests in the city now, that is hands down the most organized protest I have ever been to.
You're going to have to tell us all about it because I, of course, wasn't there.
You weren't. So, guys in the chat, where should we start? We're going to need like 5 hours. There's just too much happening news-wise.
This is going to be a crazy episode. I'm just trying to find a video. I have a video, and I've lost it now, of was some of the cat fights that happened over toilet paper during COVID, and I don't have it in this folder anymore.
I sadly remember them. So, you know, I can't remember I've told this story. I was in Bali when this was all happening. I was working over there. This is when the infamous volcano incident happened, people. And my girlfriend and I were in the pool of our villa, and we're like looking at all these videos of people going wild over toilet paper. And like we'd been out of the country over a week and a half, so we had no context for what was going on. And because we were in Bali, we weren't looking at the news or anything. And when we put up a story on our Instagrams, like mocking it and laughing, and then we got inundated with messages saying, "You guys don't know what's going on, do you?" And I'm like, obviously not. Yeah. And then that was that was my introduction to COVID.
All right. So what we're having is another little COVID spasm, another little retard moment from otherwise intelligent people. But instead of Deros, what I'm loving about this is that instead of Deros pushing shopping trolleys full of toilet paper and scratching each other's eyeballs out, we have rich bitches in like Land Rover Discoveries bitching about how long it takes to get to the front of the queue because they all decided to go and jump in the queue to try and get fuel at the same time. And here's the thing. These women need a full tank of fuel so they can drive to freaking Pilates. Like these are Touareg tractors that are doing light duties at best, being driven by people who have options such as public transport, as opposed to just compare the pair with me for a second. Primary producers who are literally running out of diesel. What's today's Monday? So it's believed the Darling Downs area, so it's Queensland and northern New South Wales are being hit the worst right now. The Darling Downs area is going to be out of fuel largely by Wednesday. Now, obviously, each property is different. These are some pretty substantial farms. Some of them have, 10,000 litre tanks on site, and it depends on where they were at. They might have another week to go, right? But we are literally about to see harvests stopping. We're going to see trucks stopping. We're going to see all of that happening unless somebody manages to figure out how to say no to the rich bitches with Touareg tractors and get that diesel to where it's actually needed. Because here's the thing. If the Touareg tractor mob are freaking out over fuel right now, just fast forward 2 weeks. And if we don't fix this, and we will, relax, don't stress. This is absolutely going to be fine. But just picture the scenario. They're freaking out over diesel that they don't even need. They can walk to freaking Pilates. How are they going to respond if the food stops? Right? Just pick those very same people are going to completely flip.
I can tell you now, you are an out of touch country bumpkin because they're not trying to get to Pilates. They're trying to get to their facial, to get to their Botox, and to get their matcha.
Yeah.
So unless there's going to be a great matcha shortage, I don't think they're particularly worried about whether or not they can get steak at the supermarket. But whether or not they can get their coffee and their matcha is a bigger issue.
They're all going to have to become breatharians. Okay. What's her name? Is it Gwyneth Paltrow? Is she the breatharian? She's going to become super popular real soon. All right. Because all these women, these doctors' wives with their jolly Land Rover Discoveries, the only thing they will be eating in a couple of weeks' time is going to be air. No, that's not actually going to happen. But it just frustrates me. Like these are the people that are creating this problem and they are the least equipped to deal with it.
Well, it just goes to show you the volatility of social media as well. I mean, like we say every podcast, a lie gets around the world before the truth has a chance to put its shoes on. And what this is, it's just more fear. And you've got to remember, like, I'm not trying to justify their behavior because it's ridiculous. But these are people who are getting whipped up into a frenzy by social media. And it's a whole bunch of commentators who, and this is something you and I have spoken about at length, but commentators through their need to build an audience and to get that outrage and get the clicks, they lean into stories. They don't give it context. People see those videos. They go viral. People share them. It whips people up into a frenzy. And that's why you end up with people fighting over toilet paper or lining up for hours to get diesel. These people are so conditioned to assume the worst, and they're not thinking critically. And it's really easy to sit there and mock them, and laugh. And look, we can. But at the same time, these people, they're genuinely out of their minds. These are not people thinking clearly.
So there's also a lot of misinformation, and there is exactly like you said, there is no incentive for people like you or me or the mainstream media, because they have the exact same incentives we do. There is no incentive for us to actually be rational. So here's a great comment here, because this reflects something that a lot of people believe to be true, not having a go red pilled, but actually technically what you're saying here isn't true. So what he says is, to be honest, I support having some spare fuel for a rainy day, but after our government isn't storing enough to keep up with recommendations, why should we trust them? What red pill is referring to there is that Australia has 25 to 35, depending on which type of fuel, days supply in onshore reserves in Australia. And the International Energy Agency recommends 90 days. The thing is, they recommend 90 days of your net import volume, not of your total consumption volume. Actually, that 30 days of supply of all forms of consumption in Australia actually equals about 1.5 times the minimum levels recommended by the IEA. Right? Because the IEA is not saying 90 days of full consumption. They're saying 90 days of your net imports, your imports minus your exports. Now, it's a dumb measure, and it shouldn't be done that way because, for example, even if we stopped exporting, we don't have the refining capacity to use that oil that we're no longer exporting. We can't turn it into usable fuels fast enough. So there's it's a dumb measure. They came up with it in the 70s. It shouldn't be the way that it is. But actually, technically, Australia is 100% compliant with the IEA's 90 days of net imports requirement. It's not enough, I would argue, and I think it's really dumb that we had, emphasis on the word had, another strategic reserve in the US made up of about 3 million barrels of unrefined crude oil. And the reason they long-term store crude oil is because once you refine it into a fuel, it starts to go off. You can store crude oil essentially forever. It's the same as what it was under the ground. It's just going to sit there. Once you refine it, that's when the clock starts ticking. You've got to use, petrol within sort of 6 months and diesel certainly within a year or so, or you're going to start to have some issues with the quality of the fuel. So they store it as crude. But that means that our offshore strategic reserve is 1/3 of the way around the planet across the Pacific Ocean. And on the way, it's going to have to stop off in Singapore or somewhere like that to get turned from crude into actual fuel. So we can have our strategic reserve, just got to wait a couple of weeks to find a ship that's available, get it to pick up the crude in the US, sail it to Singapore, wait for the production queue to be ready in Singapore to get to our oil, turn that into fuels, load that onto a different tanker, by the way, because I don't want to mix your refined fuels and your crudes. So now we've got to find another ship, get that thing to that port, pick up the refined fuels and get that to Australia, and then we'll be completely fine for approximately 3 days. That's roughly the volume of crude oil that we have, or had, I should say, sitting in the US. So this is genius level 10D chess. This is such a complicated genius master plan for energy security that I can't even comprehend it.
Yeah, look, and it just goes to show how completely naive the average person is to this as well. I mean, G and I were looking into this morning. We were talking to Grok, and we're asking, what happened? What were the policies made? What decisions were made by politicians in Australia to lead us to where we're at today? And we only have 2 refineries left. And we do extract crude, but it's a different kind of crude. I think it's a premium crude, and from what I remember, it's like 250,000 barrels. It's not a lot, and it's mostly exported. And we do the same thing with our gas. So it became cheaper, and this is what people don't understand. This is like cause and effect in Australia, and we're seeing. I want to say we're at the antithesis of this now, because what we're seeing is a diabolical collapse of industries and big infrastructure, because we have had for the last 30 years put into people's head that you need higher wages and you deserve this and you can be anything. And so through all of that and all the bureaucracy and all the red tape, it led to it being more economical to import all of that than it was to produce it here in our own country. So we had, I think at one point, 10 refineries, and we had enough. We were making enough fuel. We're making enough fuel here in this country for all domestic use. We didn't need to import. And then throughout the last, 30, 40 years, we slowly closed it down. I think we closed down a lot more refineries in the 2010s. And now we have 2. Yep. That's it.
We have 2. So there's a lot to say there. I want to touch on this comment here. Slow cook your plastic back down into fuel. I thought this was fake. I thought my friend who'd first told me about pyrolysis was absolutely 100% yanking my chain. It took so long. We looked at so many websites before I was actually confident that he hadn't just set me up somehow. So pyrolysis is a real thing, and you can get a backyard machine or backyard. It's a type of furnace, I guess you'd call it, where you can literally just feed plastic bottles, caps, soft plastic wrapping, Glad bags, whatever. You can feed plastic in, and you run a process, and it doesn't melt it in the sense of plastic that melts. It reliquefies it. And this is something I didn't understand. I obviously didn't pay enough attention during chemistry. Hard plastics are actually the same as the liquid oil. It's just the molecular bonds have been rearranged. And so it can actually turn back into the liquid. That blows my mind. That absolutely, I didn't pay enough attention chemistry is not my thing. All right. I can't be a genius at everything, Carly.
You clearly haven't made a carbon snake before. Like, this is basic chemistry. But good on you.
Evidently not. Now, there was one other comment I wanted here. Okay. Oops, sorry. We'll come back to that one in a second. So this is a great comment here. I know I filled up last week at $1.84 for diesel. 2 days later, it was $2.17. I want to know what the toothless organization at the ACCC is doing. Here's the thing. People get upset because they say, well, the fuel that's already in the tank underground didn't cost them that much. Right, so they should be able to sell us that fuel for the lower price, the price they bought it for. The problem is every liter of fuel turns into a liter of air that they have to replace with another liter of fuel. And guess what price they're buying that at? They have to buy the refill with the money they're making out of what they're selling right now. It'd be like walking into a gold dealer and saying, hang on, you bought that ounce of gold 5 years ago for a fraction of what you're trying to charge me now. How dare you try and price gouge me? Well, no, I'm sorry. That's worth whatever it's worth now. And sorry, but that's just.
I agree with you, but can we just break this down a little bit more? Because this is a really important distinction, and this is something people get tripped up over all the time. Sure. So just to slow it down for people, what people are frustrated with is that they know that the fuel that's currently at the petrol station was bought at a lower price. So why aren't they selling it at their lower price? Because they buy so far ahead that if they sell that at a lower price and they lose money, they can't afford to replace it with the more expensive fuel. So they're constantly having to prepare to buy in the future. So the reason I wanted to slow this down is because this is a big argument and we see it all the time. It's a bit like the price gouging with Woolies. What people need to understand is, as a business, if you can't afford to replace that stock, we're in big, big trouble. So another thing to point out, G and I looked at this afternoon. So for example, out in like Leongatha or out in a rural town, the petrol might still be $1.80, but in the city, it's already at $2.20. And they're like, how is that? Why is that? Well, the answer is the country petrol station, they might buy in a tank of fuel and it lasts them 6, 7, 8 weeks. But the inner city fuel station is going through that fuel at such a rate, they constantly need to keep buying. And so they're buying at the prices as they're, when they're becoming more and more volatile. So this is where I get, I realize we need to slow down for consumers, because you've explained this about Carlz and Woolies. They're not price gouging. Their margin is 2 to 3%.
About 2.7%.
Yeah, but that's another, I'm not going to say a lie, but it's another lying by omission that you hear a
common
lot.
Myth.
Particularly with online commentators. And so whenever we come and do these things, I think it's really important we just slow it down and give people a real example of it, because this is where we, whoever watching this podcast, when you encounter that argument, you can push back a bit.
I didn't know Greta Thunberg was moving to Australia.
No, just in Arden.
I know. I'm being funny. Another great comment here. Fuel shortages are temporary, so it's worth using diesel responsibly. Short trips waste what little we have. Some treat it like their own supply, but we all share the impact. Steady habits help everyone. I 100% agree. Now, I'm about to say something that I don't think I've ever said before. I don't think that the government should cut the fuel excise as an emergency measure to help with affordability right now. I think they should abolish it altogether, sure, but if we're going to have it, now is not the time to reduce it. The pain that is being caused on prices is exactly what will cause these sorts of behavior changes that Sergeant Brownleg is talking about here. People going, actually, you know what? I don't need to make that trip. I don't need to do that run down to the supermarket to get that one thing. I'll cook dinner without it. people carpooling to work, whatever the behavior, taking the train, whatever the behavior changes that are being driven by the pain of prices, that is actually, unfortunately, necessary. That's the market at work. Now, I would love to see this tax gone altogether, always. And so the price will rise and fall without that tax on it. But if we now cut the tax in order to reduce the pain of the price increase, what we're actually doing is reducing the effectiveness of the price increase to change people's behavior to deal with the sudden loss in supply. So counterintuitively, a lot of people are screaming out that the government should cut the excise. Yes, they should permanently and forever. It should just be gone. But if we're going to have it, if it's going to exist, it should not be temporarily cut due to a price spike. You have to let the price spike do its job.
Yeah. I had a video a little while ago and I meant to bring it up on the podcast. I don't know if I'll be able to find it. It was on X. Let me see if I can find it on my phone before I freeze my screen. But basically it was a Tesla driving with a trailer, and in the trailer was a generator and it was charging itself with the generator. It was towing behind it. I'm like, if that doesn't sum up the current climate crisis attitude, we are literally cutting off our noses to spite our faces. And in this desire to achieve net zero, in this ridiculous quest to think that we can control the planet, we are resorting to such stupid lengths that, by the way, are uniquely Australian. Like, most big countries aren't doing this yet. It's just we with the weak government and unfortunately a lot of very indoctrinated people who fall for it.
Yeah, and it's the media, the commentator class. It's very easy to come up with a slogan that gets you attention. It's much more difficult to put truth, because truth is usually more complicated and more nuanced and more conditional, into a format that is going to be as attention grabbing. And so people just kind of go for the easy attention grabbing stuff. So the unfortunate reality is we're stuck with this for a little while, but not forever. So let's not forget, 3 years ago, 2022, as we were coming out of COVID lockdowns and the world was trying to get started again, crude oil hit $120 a barrel, similar price to what we have right now. That was 3 years ago, or 4 years ago now, call it. All right. So this has happened before. This isn't unprecedented. The closing of the Straits of Hormuz is unprecedented. The shutting down of wartime insurance by Lloyd's of London and the insurance cartel, yes, that's unprecedented, but it hasn't led to prices that are unprecedented. And I don't think it will. I really don't. I genuinely don't believe it will. Number one, there are too many countries that have too much at stake to allow that to happen. Number two, Iran's capacity to harass shipping in the Strait has degraded enormously. And if we're not already at the point where the US military can guarantee physical security of tankers passing through the Strait, we can't be far away, because what's happening with Iran at the moment is every time they use a launch vehicle or a launch site, that is getting immediately retargeted by the US. The US have taken out the majority of the targets that they already had on their list. They're now surveilling, they're watching. And the minute something launches, it hits their radar within seconds of takeoff, and they can figure out exactly where that came from. They've already got the satellites in the air, so the satellite can go, oh yeah, that was this vehicle here. And 30 seconds later, 5 minutes later, whatever it may be, a loitering drone an hour later takes out that vehicle. So their capacity to launch, just their stockpile, their inventory to start with, but also their vehicles and their capacity to launch, the number of crews left willing to launch, because they ain't stupid. They know what's going on. So the capacity for them to harass shipping is declining massively. The problem is, what's the acceptable threshold? For as long as there's a risk of one remaining Shahad drone, do we have to keep the Straits? Like at what point do we say, okay, the risk is low enough, run that gauntlet? And I don't have a definitive answer for that. The US Energy Secretary today, or I don't know, about 15 hours ago, came out and said that a full-size tanker had passed through the Straits of Hormuz, and then went on to say that it's going to be a matter of weeks before they're back up to full traffic. Now, I think that's probably true, but I also think he's being a little bit deceptive. And I want to point this out here, because if you look at the tracking information, you can't see a large tanker pass through the strait, and that's for good reason, because they turn off their AIS, their beacon system, essentially. They turn that off because obviously that helps to target them. It transmits their GPS location. Yay. For a drone to go, okay, I'll fly to that location. Thank you very much. But you can see which ships disappear on this side and reappear on that side. And as best as I can tell, I stand to be corrected if someone has managed to find this thing. But as best as I can tell, there is no Western flagged oil tanker that has gone from one side of the Hormuz Straits to the other in that window of time. The only ones that appear to be moving at the moment are members of the Shadow Fleet, which I've talked about before. These are the unregistered, often unflagged vessels that were a part of the illegal or the sanctioned trade in oil. They are still moving around. Iran is still moving its oil, believe it or not, even under these circumstances. And some Chinese vessels, which actually they add to their beacons. They don't just have their AIS. They add another beacon. It's like transmitting, hey, we're Chinese Communist Party owned over here. Please be nice to us. So without the energy secretary coming out and specifically saying this is the name of the vessel, you can see on the tracking data it was over here, then the beacon disappears, and now you can see that it's over here on the public AIS systems. In the absence of that, I think we have to consider the possibility that they're being a little bit clever. And actually, the vessel that passed through wasn't one of theirs, and it wasn't a Western flagged vessel. It was probably a vessel that the Iranians would have looked at and said, that's an allied vessel, which we're going to choose not to attack. So I'm not quite sure just how close are we. I think it is only a matter of weeks or a month and a half at most. I don't think this is going to be a super long I don't think uranium. I don't think Iran can maintain a posture for that long.
Yeah.
But I also think that they're being a little bit tricky with their language.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I was having a chat to Diba before when we were getting his microphone sorted. And, I was saying that, particularly like around Iran at the moment, so much of what's coming out, so much of what I see on social media, I have to firstly do a double take for AI because we've already had a whole host
100%.
of footage being AI and proven to be AI. I mean, there's really obvious AI, and then there's like a lot more sinister AI, and we'll get into that. Another thing is the messaging. When it comes to all of this sort of stuff, as a Joe Blow who's sitting back here in Australia, it is so hard for us to decipher the truth right now. And when I see everyone like panic buying and freaking out, and all these commentators putting up information onto the internet with such conviction that they're so confident in it, I think it's actually incredibly dangerous to be doing that. And which is why, like, when I come on here, I'm always like, it could be. It's worth talking about. I can't say it for truth. I don't know. But when it comes to things like this, it's speculation at this point. I don't think anyone knows.
So, Carly, you know how I tell you off for telling off our beloved Oddies. I do to you the thing that I'm telling you not to do to them, right?
Oh, I know you do. Yeah.
Now I'm going to double down on that hypocrisy and do to them the thing that I do to you whilst telling you not to do it to them. And I'm going to have a go at the Oddies because I've joined the... sorry, somber music, everybody.
Guys, get excited. You're about to get roasted.
I had to dig up my Discord passwords and join Discord because Carly bullied me. That's the bottom line. This is workplace bullying, and I am on Discord now. So everybody have your fun.
You know that line from my big fat Greek wedding? The man may be the head, but the woman is the neck. She can turn the head any way she wants. That summarizes Topher's and my working relationship. If you want to know who's calling the shots, let's get.
I am not going to comment because I haven't been given permission. So I am on Discord, and in one of the threads there was a video that showed was it the B2, the one that looks like it's pixelated, the one that looks like a 32-bit computer game or an 8-bit computer game. Anyway, doing this lovely slow turn around an aircraft carrier, and someone had dropped that in there and said, "Oh, this is amazing. Yeah, you'd be hooting and hollering if you saw this," or whatever the comment was. And I had to be the bad guy and go, "That's a picture from a computer game. That's not even."
Is that the plane that was like avoiding the Iranian bomb?
Oh, there's a lot of those that are out of computer games as well. No, this one was just one doing a very slow turn around an aircraft carrier. And it's like, there's not a single person. I mean, apart from the fact that the graphics look like a computer game, there's not a single person to be seen anywhere on any of the decks of the aircraft carrier that we do see fairly well in the sweep of the camera. Or the other ones I love is where they're trying to pass it off as a real dogfighter or a real missile or whatever, but the camera is just magically flying along in third person view.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And you're like,
well, there's always a cameraman. Remember, the cameraman doesn't die.
Well, Bear Grylls taught me that. The thing is, like, Sorry.
Sorry,
Yeah,
no.
you go. You
No,
go.
no. I've seen some pretty amazing footage, and I have to say the most realistic AI is when you see a man with like an M60 machine gun sitting on a flying carpet. I mean, it's really hard to distinguish whether or not that's real or not.
Yeah. No, that's obviously the Aladdin Brigade. No, my favorite growing up. So Bear Grylls, I didn't watch a lot of him as a kid, but whenever I had the chance to watch him, I was like, oh yeah, Bear Grylls, this guy's amazing. And then my older brother ruined it because he pointed out that everywhere Bear Grylls goes, some dude with, back then, these were serious video cameras, some dude with 20 kilograms of video camera and who knows how much other gear and spare batteries has already beaten him up there because he's pointing the camera back down at Bear Grylls as Bear Grylls makes his way across the treacherous whatever. Absolutely ruined it. I could never watch any of those sorts of shows the same way again, ever.
Yeah. And look, the thing is, I mean, there's nothing wrong with entertainment, but particularly now, as someone who's like heavily involved in AI, I can tell you now, guys, it is not hard to make these videos. I can do them within like 3 minutes. Or I was making a whole host of videos this afternoon. And there is a level of sinisterness to it because it's like everything. I mean, just because you can doesn't mean you should. But I have seen so much footage from the pro-Palestine crowd posting genuinely AI footage or worse. It's footage from a totally different region with a totally different context, and they're posting it as fact. And now, I mean, you just argue with people in the comments. There's no point. It's a waste of our breath.
Oh, yeah.
But something I think you and I have always done on this podcast and something that we'll continue to do is to remember people, like, you have agency. Just because it's on the internet and everyone's arguing about it doesn't mean you have to get involved. And I think particularly with what's going on, it's the same thing.
My absolute favorite so far from the Iran conflict was when Iran allegedly destroyed a Ukrainian weapons depot in 2017, except that it was allegedly now all of a sudden in Israel. Not quite sure how that worked, but somehow Iran in 2026 destroyed a Ukrainian weapons depot in 2017, and it went everywhere. That one went everywhere. And I'm like, I really feel like I've seen that before. And it took 30 seconds. I don't think it was the first Google that got it for me, but the first Google gave me the lead that I needed that I followed. And then I found it on the second Google. Like, this isn't difficult to fact check, but people, I think, just want that moment. We've talked about this before. People share things because it makes them look good. They think, oh, if I get this out now before my friends have seen it, then it'll make me look good. And of course, there goes all your discretion.
I want to talk about citizen journalism, right? Because this is a bit of a segue, but I think this is really important because what you're talking about is basically people reclaiming agency. We can do all of this stuff. I mean, I've said this 1,000 times and I'm going to drum it into you guys until you're like, oh my God, all I hear is Carly saying the same thing. This thing here, this bloody device, we all have one. Some of us have better ones than others. Mine is better, obviously. For those dinosaurs on an Android, yours apparently does do the same thing. I think Androids can connect to the internet. I might be wrong. But iPhones are basically a university. And at this point, I have seen, do you like that? I have seen so many people take the time to ask the question to someone else as opposed to just take it upon their own initiative to go and just ask some basic questions. And with AI now, there is no excuse.
So have you seen that website, Let Me Google That For You? So you go to that website, you Google it, and what it does is it gives you a super long, unique URL. And if someone clicks on it, it takes them through the show of, like, it looks like the Google website, and the cursor moves and goes click, and it types whatever it was into the thing, and it clicks search. Like, it takes them through the theater of you having to watch as it Googles it for you. I don't know if it's still around, but I think it was letmegooglethatforyou.com or something silly like that.
Can I just take a moment? I'm currently getting roasted in the comments for being an Apple
I'm loving
fangirl.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oddies, I'm going to say this is the moment where we fracture. I thought you were all on my team. Apparently, you're all some Topher Field sycophant.
Yes.
I didn't realize you're all retarded. I'm genuinely shocked. I'm glad I know
Carl, Fu Mengchu, you're absolutely right. You know what? You are my new favorite person.
I think people
like you.
underestimate my role on this podcast. I am here purely to be obnoxious and annoying. That is my role. So I think I'm doing it well. I take that as a compliment.
I do wish I'd written something else on the position description. In hindsight, That was a mistake. Although I got to say, I hired well for the role.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hitting all my KPIs, aren't I?
Oh, tell you what, smashing it out of the park.
I do have a tangent. You got a tangent?
Tangent time, tangent time, tangent time, tangent time, tangent time.
Anyone who's had no context to us or what we do will watch that and just be like, these people are actually nuts. And you're not wrong.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
I mean, correct.
Sad Mac can be retired in 2 weeks, guys, just so you know. Sad Mac.
Boat anchor incoming.
I have bought myself, through donation of my liver and my kidney, I needed both, to upgrade to the latest MacBook Pro. And so we can all be excited.
Can I just say, your liver is worth a lot more than mine because it's done a lot less work in its lifetime. So that is a measure of just how expensive Macs are. Like that's a top-notch liver and they still wanted the kidney.
Yeah. I was so shocked. Okay, so I heard a rumor, and I don't know if this is true, to be fair. I know I needed a new computer. For me, it's about the GPU. I need it for video production as well as all the AI that I do.
Yeah.
And I bought the one that I currently have in 2021. So this is prior to the whole AI boom. But I heard that given what's going on, the volatility with Iran and the potential of, China making a move on Taiwan, that silicon chips are now being basically taken up mostly by defense forces and a whole lot of industry, and the consumer market is at the bottom of the ladder. So when it comes to securing new tech, it's sort of like it's going to go back to COVID times, because when I bought this was in COVID, and I think I waited, from memory, I'm pretty sure it was like 3 or 4 months before I actually got the computer, because we had the whole the backing up from the supply chain. And so the new Mac got released, I think, 4 or 5 days ago. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to press the button, buy it now, just because I don't want to be that person in like 4 or 5 months going, oh my God, I can't get my stuff. Do you want to know the number? I'm scared to tell you.
Okay. Is it 5 figures or is it still only 4?
Oh, no, it's 4 figures, but it's an eye-watering 5 figures. It was... So I'm still a student, and I got the student discount, which is not much. I think it's like 12%. It was $5,480.
Yeah. Yeah.
So much money.
You couldn't even sell one of your dogs for it, because like 13-year-old dog in need of surgery, that's not worth that much.
16. Imani's 16. Oh, come on.
Sorry, I didn't mean to rip you off, Imani. So here's the thing. We came out of COVID. So during COVID, there was a whole chip shortage because of supply chain interruptions. We came out of COVID. There was the backlog. Then we rolled straight out of that into the AI boom. And I just feel like it's been really relentless and unfair. But I could kind of accept it. I could rationalize it with, in my rational brain. And then they started shoving all this silicon into smart missiles and blowing it up. And at that point, I was like, this is just unfair. Like, you guys are turning my RAM chips into fireworks. I don't get to see the fireworks and I don't get to have the RAM chips. And now I'm just kind of pissed. Like, can we just calm down? I want a cheap graphics card.
I have a story for you. So, your external memory cards, like your SSD drives, they're all going to go through the roof for this exact reason. RAM's becoming incredibly expensive. So it's hit Western Digital and I think SanDisk, not so much to Toshiba yet. Or I know I personally buy the Samsung ones, but all of this consumer tech is going to become I've got those. They're going to become astronomically expensive. So I'm not telling you to panic buy, but it's more so like, keep an eye on prices, because things are only going to go up.
Yeah. Look, I was building PCs back in the day where the motherboard had a whole bunch of jumper switches that you needed a pin. They were so tiny. If you tried to use your finger, you'd push like 4 of them at once. You had to use a pin to flick the individual ones, and you had to use the manual. The manual was like a telephone book. And depending on which accessories you had plugged into which ports, you had to flick the jumper switches in different directions. And then if you wanted to overclock, you couldn't overclock the different components independently. You could just overclock the clock and everything would accelerate. And then you could get to maybe like 2 or 3%. 50% overclocked, and then things would start to break. So I was building PCs back then, and I was building computers for friends and for myself. I was big into gaming, and all the way through to they all became plug and play, boring. You just bought the bits, shoved them in. And it all just all the bits recognized each other, and it all just kind of worked. And it kind of got a bit boring at that point. But what was exciting was the bang for the buck. You were spending the same amount of money, but the
I might have to, guys. I might have to do an OnlyFans at this point.
You're spending the same amount of money, but the level of performance you were getting was going up astronomically. I feel like since COVID, the price has been going up astronomically, and the performance, it is getting better. There's no question. The computers are still getting faster. But I don't feel like the performance increases in any way justify the price increases we've seen in the last 6 years. It's like, I feel like something fundamentally broke at that point, and it has never recovered.
I think it has too. I mean, I'm the first one to say this about Apple products. I mean, the prolific way that new tech companies, or not new tech companies, but tech companies are putting out new products all the time. As a photographer, Canon's a really good example. I think Canon produce a new camera every 6 months. It's ridiculous. You know, here's the R5. It's the latest, greatest. Oh, guess what? A couple of years later, here's the R5.2 and the R5.3. And then, here's the R6.2 and the R6.3. And it gets to a point where people will go and replace their entire kit based on incremental increases in the tech itself. But yeah, I was going to go back to that comment about AI though. Where was that one?
I'm just scrolling for it now.
Here, I got it.
Oh, goodness.
AI becomes a problem once everyone becomes reliant on it being factuality, and those who control it can push agendas far worse than mainstream media does now. How is that any different to social media? And this is where I get tripped up, because it's like, this is a Luddite mindset. And obviously I'm biased. I'm very pro AI, but not without its parameters, not without using your brain and having agency. But this is the exact same attitude that came out with the internet. It's the exact same attitude that came out with television. It's the same attitude that came out with the bloody printing press. For so long as a new way of democratizing the dissemination of information and people having access to it that didn't normally, people like this always have that same attitude.
I kid you not. When books were becoming, the printing press, books were becoming accessible. This was no longer something that a scribe did, and a single book would cost you a month's wages. When they were becoming accessible, one of the criticisms of them was that it would damage people's ability to remember and recall information, because they'd just be able to go back to the book and find it again. And so they wouldn't bother committing things to memory. That is exactly the same kind of argument that we're making now about all kinds of different things, only it was about a book. These days we're like, oh, you must be smart, you read lots of books. Back then it was like, oh, you must be an idiot, you read lots of books. This is a universal kind of thing. Progress is always looked down on initially by a certain group of people. It's always viewed as inferior, inherently inferior by a certain subset of society. There's a certain psychology. I don't know exactly what it is that does that. But what's interesting about this is, so we have this question here around sort of the control of the information. And I agree with your point, Carly. I think we already crossed that threshold a long time ago. People place way too much faith in media, but also understand these things go in cycles. When Instagram first went big, everyone believed the Insta perfect life. And then very quickly we went, oh, hang on, that's a load of baloney. That's all fake. When talking heads and TV came out and the radio voice came out, everyone went, oh, these people must know what they're talking about. Well, it took a couple of decades, but we're moving past that now. That myth, the man behind the curtain has been exposed. The same is going to happen with AI. The same is going to happen, where actually we're going to move through a period where it is viewed as infallible and perfect and everything else. And yes, an enormous amount of harm is going to be done in that period of time, an enormous amount of harm. But because of that harm, we're going to move past that to the point where actually that's no longer considered to be, the fact that the AI said so is no longer considered to be the gold standard. So we are entering a new cycle, but it's not a new cycle as in we've never seen it before. It's just a new iteration of a cycle that we go through every time there is a leap in technology.
I make this point in my thesis when I was writing AI. Hey guys, you haven't had a drink, masters. But I make this point because I think it's really important. AI is only going to, it's the same as money. I look at AI the same way you talk about money. It is only going to exacerbate the attributes that you already have, right? So for example, if you're already a lazy person, AI will make you even lazier. If you're
Yep.
someone that is easily fooled by gibberish, you'll easily be fooled by AI. So, I saw someone in the chat, I lost the comment, but it was basically saying that, AI will tell you ABC is unbiased news. Well, yes, because you probably haven't learned how to program your AI bot yet. You can talk to it, you can make it do things. It's like clay. Most people will jump onto Claude, ChatGPT, Perplexity, whatever you're using, and just go blah, 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 and use it like Google.
Yeah.
You can train your AI bot. You can ask it to do certain things. You can go into the back end and program it. That's what makes it so cool. There are so many different things that you can do with AI. I'm not going to bore you guys with it now, but I mean, I wrote a freaking thesis on this. Like, there is so much to it, and we are literally scratching the surface when it comes to consumer AI.
Okay, so friend of the show is joining us in 10 minutes' time to talk about Iran.
Yes.
So before we get to that, I want to touch on this. Thoughts about the much reported AI bubble about to pop, or dodgy circular funding model, and the lack of grid energy required to keep data farms running. All right, so there's a lot in that question, but let me just touch on a couple of things. Tech as a general rule. So every industry follows the pathway I'm about to lay out for you. Tech travels down this pathway faster, but every industry follows this pathway. First comes innovation. With innovation comes disruption. So whatever was there before is now being disrupted, and often comes very high profit margins because you're the first mover into a market. You've seen an opportunity, or you've created a product that no one else has got yet. You've got very high margins. Because there's very high margins and a lot of money to be made, a lot of other people jump on board, and then they keep on innovating and trying to one up you. You end up with a technology arms race, and there's a lot of money at stake. So there's a huge amount of investment being rammed into this new exciting sector. But what happens then is what's referred to as the commoditization of an industry. So it becomes ubiquitous. Now, what we saw, so take, for example, word processing, Office, Microsoft Office type suites. Once upon a time, you paid hundreds upon hundreds of dollars to buy the CDs, or actually the floppy disks, really back in the day, to plug into your computer and install it onto your computer. And then the price got astronomical. I mean, the Adobe suite, I bought the last one before they offered the subscription. I paid about $3,500 for the full Adobe suite to install onto my computer. And so they can charge these premium prices because there's not a lot of competition. But then in comes your Google suite, and they start offering spreadsheets and their word processors, and the whole thing becomes commoditized, and you enter a new phase that's referred to as the race to zero. Now, what's happening basically is, in order to compete now, because they've invested all this money, they're stuck in the industry now, they've got all this sunk cost, and they've just got to try and figure out how to not go bankrupt at this point. So they're just stuffing more and more value into their offering. And so that's where we saw, you could get Open Office for free, and Microsoft Office had to go to a subscription model. And then Google, if you just sign up for your Google monthly fee, you get online storage and your email and all of the whole suite of stuff. And it's a couple of bucks a month now. The race to zero took over, and those things have been commoditized. They're so normal, they're so ubiquitous. There are so many options now that they can't command a premium. But what's interesting is that even in industries that have become completely ubiquitous, take entertainment. There is more hours of entertainment being uploaded every hour than you could watch in a year in terms of just free entertainment on YouTube. If you physically can't watch it. And yet, even though all of that's available for free on YouTube, I guarantee you almost every single person watching still pays for a subscription somewhere. Why? Mm-hmm. It's all there for free. It's been fully commoditized. There is no money to be made in entertainment anymore because there's a bajillion free options. And yet somehow people are making money in entertainment, and people still spend money to go to a cinema. They pay money for a subscription. People buy me coffees from time to time. Like that's a crazy choice to make. You already watched the video; it was free, right? But what are you paying for at that point? Well, you're paying for the particular thing that you want to see, whether it's the subscription to Amazon or whether it's buying me a coffee because you want me to do more of my kinds of videos. Whatever it may be, you're now focusing your money onto that very specific thing. AI is going to go through exactly the same pathway. We're still in the moment where people are shoving money in because the margins look enormous. Now, they're not making any money because they're having all the capital costs are still rolling out, but they're sitting there going, any minute now, we're going to make a truckload of money on this thing. Well, no, they're not. It's that will never mature. It never does. It never materializes. Most of the entrants will go bankrupt. That's what happens. Mm-hmm. As an industry commoditizes, most of the entrants go bankrupt. Only the fittest survive. Only the ones that can get closest to zero survive. but that's also what's good for consumers because we get more for less of our money.
Yep.
So that's the pathway that I see AI going on. I can't really comment on the circular funding model specifically, but watch the race to zero.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have said the same thing. I think a perfect example of this, oh, sorry, this is our guest. So a perfect example of this is just how we went from having cable TV, or like cable was the new thing.
Oh, yeah.
And then all the egalitarians made it all, sort of that you were pirating it, you had Pirate Bay,
Yep.
and then you had LimeWire, Kazaa, all those sorts of things. It's all happening within the space of about a decade. And then all of a sudden we had Netflix. And then we had, Stan and all the others that have popped up in its place. And now you've got to a point where there are so many different subscription companies that any given time, this without fail, I kid you not, the other night I said to G, because you and I talked about it on the podcast, I think, I said, let's watch Good Will Hunting. And so I had seen it pop up on Netflix, God knows how long ago, but I remember seeing it on Netflix. And then I typed it into, or put it on Apple, and it was like, no, sorry, now it's on Stan. I'm like, well, I don't have Stan this month. And so you go through this point where you just get annoyed and you're like, you know what? I'll just rent the movie, or I'll buy the movie for $4.99. Or you get to a point where you're like, I just want one subscription that has all of them in the same thing, which is back to cable, baby. So it's sort of.
So, but insert, this is how they get you. So take Amazon, for example, and they all do it, Netflix as well. You pay the subscription fee, but they know that loyalty is a problem. So what they do is they get you then to buy. So for example, I'm on Amazon because I wanted the free delivery, or I do all my books and everything through Amazon. It's worth it to get the free delivery. So I'm with Amazon, and then I go, right, I want to watch the Lord of the Rings extended edit in 4K. Thank you very much. I can pull out my Blu-ray set, but that's only 1080p, and I don't have a Blu-ray player. Crap. All right. Amazon's got them, $34 each. Thank you very much. It's $100. But they're awesome, and I'll have them, for as long as I have Amazon, which I presume is going to be a long time. And I want to show them to my son at some point in the not too distant future. You know what? Fine, I'll do it. So I buy it. Then if the conversation ever were to come up, do we really need Amazon? Can we just let that go? Like it's, we're spending a lot of money on subscriptions. Which ones do you want to let go? Well, I can't let go of Amazon. I spent $100 on the Lord of the Rings in 4K. And so what they're doing is they're getting you to sink that extra money in specifically to take away the option of them being rotated out of your subscription rotation.
Yeah. So now does everyone feel bad for giving away all your DVDs and your CDs, and you realize that you'll own nothing and you're still not happy? That's what it is. It's the same with Spotify. I was thinking this the other day. I've seen there's a massive renaissance with people going back to MP3 players, particularly iPods. And people are, all these millennials are uploading videos to Instagram and whatnot, showing that they're pulling their iPods out of an archive box, and they're re-listening to their music. But I think that speaks to the fact that we don't own anything anymore. If Spotify was to go down, or Apple Music, or whatever you listen to your music on, that music's gone. If you don't have access to the internet, you haven't downloaded it, it's gone. And I saw a comment just popping up before saying this is why piracy is coming back. Absolutely. Because people have recognized that you need to hold the tangible asset, because if you don't, it can be taken away from you, even though you've invested the money.
All right. So it's enough. It's time for us to stop talking about serious topics like pirating and 90s pop music culture and technology and the outrageous price of RAM chips, and move to something more lighthearted and trivial like World War III. Like, why not? Let's just move to something that we can all just sort of chill and relax a little bit while we talk about it.
What could be to talk about?
I know there's nothing going on, is there? There's nothing going on. No, we had last week, and thank you, Carly, because you're the reason why. We had Diba on last week, and he was fantastic, but we had issues being able to hear him. This is how much he loves you guys.
Or is that standard Oddcast behavior where our tech just doesn't work as we want it to?
Well,
I would say that's on brand.
Look, I think he was just really getting into the Oddcast vibe, having tech issues. But this is how much he loves you guys, Oddies. He bought a microphone specifically so that he can come back and have a chat with you guys, and you'll be able to actually hear him, because honestly, what he had to say last week was fascinating and fantastic, and so much has happened since. Carly alluded to it earlier with the events in the city yesterday. I'm not going to try and comment on it at all because I wasn't there, and the man himself is here. Carly, do you want to bring him in? Welcome back, Diba, to the Oddcast.
Hi, Diba.
Hi everyone. Hi, Carly. Hello.
I can
How's
hear
that
you.
sound?
I can
Thank
hear
you.
That's
Thanks for having me on again and for the platform.
You
look,
sound
you're more
so
than
much
welcome.
better.
Now, I'm really looking forward to the both of you talking about what went down yesterday, because I couldn't make it down to Melbourne. I've seen a little bit of footage, and I've heard Carly talking about this event, this protest, I guess you'd call it. I mean, I'll let you guys tell me. Tell us what it was about, what went down, what happened. What did you guys get up to yesterday?
So basically, yesterday was another march, and Diba is one of the organizers, and it was in the city, and you guys wouldn't know because it certainly wasn't picked up by any of the mainstream media outlets, but it was one of the, honestly, hand on my heart, the most well-organized protests in Melbourne I have ever seen. Diba, do you want to tell us a bit about it?
Look, we've been since January. Iranians been out on the streets everywhere around the world, and Melbourne is no exception to it. We are a group of Iranians got together, and I'm part of the Mel Iran team that we are organizing protests every second week. And there's another team called Gada Javidan, which blessing in disguise. They really take on every second week, as well. That gives us a bit of a breather and a bit of a space to be able to better organize the protest. We organized a march yesterday from Melbourne, from the Victorian State Library to Parliament. And there's a lot of organization in the background. I'm just only one of the volunteers. There was like, just to paint a bigger picture for you guys, there was 92 volunteers on field as a field operation. Although there's 2 or 3, there was one had a flat tire and one was a bit sick and couldn't make. So there was like 89 in total, just on field, just trying to organize this. We put a lot of planning into place from positioning, and I would have loved to hear the feedback from Carla to see what was the outside perspective of it. What we tried to convey, the message is first thing first. Yesterday was the International Women's Day, so that was the theme of the protest. That's why we had the line up to that, and we had women guest speakers, and even the singing at the end and the dancing of the ladies at the end and the way they dressed up. But ultimately, the message was for us to show appreciation to the U.S. troops, President Trump and Israelis, Bibi Netanyahu, for the rescue mission. We don't call this a war. We clearly call it a rescue mission, and that was the main purpose. We're out there to keep the message live and to make sure people hear from us.
I'm just going to play a little bit of footage. I've got some video here. Oh, hang on. Sorry. Let me just.
And then I've got some questions for Diba once we've sort of let people have a look at this and see just how incredible this event really was.
So, just so everyone knows, obviously Melbourne's been held at ransom to protest, particularly the pro-Palestine marches, for over 2.5 years. They're destructive, they're antagonistic, they're a headache for the police. The people in the CBD have had a gutful. It's decimated businesses. And then you see something like this come along and you go, whoa. So yesterday, just so that you guys remember, yesterday was the Grand Prix. We had an AFL women's match, and we had Moomba Festival. So there was a lot already going on in the CBD. And then in the centre, we all congregated at the State Library, marched down Swanston Street, and then came up Burke Street to stop in front of Parliament House. There was music. The vibe was up. Everyone was very tidy and organised. There was no disruptions. There was people running to the back of the protest to make sure anything that was dropped was cleaned. It was so contrasting compared to everything that we know. So I was going to play you a bit of footage of me. I ran up the steps of Parliament to grab this as everyone was sort of starting to pool around Parliament House.
Wow.
I just got
enormous.
It was. Sorry, guys. I just got schooled in the chat. It was not a women's AFLW. It was actually Collingwood and St Kilda, but I stand by my comments. It's a women's match.
I think you got it right first time. That really stretches back a long, long, long way. That is enormous.
Yeah, but Do you have an estimation of crowd size? Do you know how big it was?
We didn't have any numbers back from the police, but the numbers that we pull in every week is between 8 to 12,000. So yesterday would have been around probably 8 to 10,000. Of course, we had a big event on the 14th of Feb, which it was a lot big, more than 12,000. But that's the average number we pull out, and that's why we need so much volunteers, and we would like to have more volunteers actually on our team.
Yeah. So can I drill down into a couple of things here, Carly? So Stortle's made the comment, proud to see Aussie flags out there also. So what's fascinating here is we're seeing Aussie flags, we're seeing the real Iranian flags with the lion, we're seeing the US flags at times as well. And Israeli flags at times as well, depending on, obviously, like you said, these are happening all over the world. This is a combination of flags that no one had on their bingo card 2 years ago. No one thought 2 years ago that we were going to see these people marching shoulder to shoulder, getting along with each other, thanking each other, as you just did, that this is a rescue mission. So I've heard people on the internet cynically try and suggest that this is about the enemy of my enemy is my friend, that this isn't a real alliance. You're just leveraging the opportunism and blah, blah, blah. Can you tell us what's the substance of this alliance, this unity that we've seen happen? Is this just a matter of he's doing something useful, Trump is doing something useful to you, or is there something deeper going on here?
Certainly there is a lot deeper than that, but let me get back to the Aussie flags. If you look at the Iranian protests that you will see a lot on YouTube from different countries, from like all the European countries to Canada, US and all that, you will definitely see the flag of the host country. Okay, because at the end of the day, we are living in this country. We call this country our home. So we gotta have the flag of the country. We gotta pay our respect to that country. And probably, Carly, you probably heard we played the Australian national anthem at the beginning of the ceremony, and that's exactly to show our respect.
Can I just say, Diba, that blew me away. So when we were there, I mean, right now, based on all the protests we've seen in this country, we've got people burning the Australian flag. We've got death to Australia. It's considered evil to show any kind of national pride. And then to be there at the Iranian protest and hear you guys singing our national anthem, and you had the Australian flag, I was genuinely touched. And I was like, the Iranian community is more nationalistic than most Aussies at the moment.
Well, as I mentioned, this is our home. That's why we have a group of people running behind, and even not just volunteers, even general people who attend the protests, they clean rubbish after themselves. To be honest, at the end of the cleanup, when we pack up and go, I don't see all many rubbish, sort of bags. Everyone take their own rubbish home, I think it is. And just one of the things, because we got to make sure our home is clean. And second thing is we got to make sure we cause minimal disturbance. But I will come back to that. But in terms of what you see, the flags, what you mentioned, Carly, exactly. You heard a lot of death to this and death to that. And Iranians in general are sick of that. We don't want to be associated, the name of our country, you don't want to be associated with greatest sponsor of terrorists. We want to be in peace with the world. We love everybody. We want to have everybody to come to our home, to our country. In terms of, if you see Israeli flag and even American flag, is not just because now they sort of help us a rescue mission. This is a lot deeper than that. Can I go back to September 11, 2001? The only nation in Middle East who came out immediately and lit up candles were Iranians. And you do not see that in any of the other nations in Middle East.
Sure.
Okay. Since October 7, Iranians backed the Israelis, and we're not ashamed of it. And we're quite proud of it, in fact, and we're not hiding that fact either. Our relationship with Israelis go back to Cyrus the Great, about 2,500 years ago.
Okay.
So we've got a biblical connection. These are the two nations who have the biblical connection. The other thing is, Iranians are striving, once this nightmare is over, to be part of the free world. We want to
Yeah.
be the responsible citizen of the world as well. So that's the message we're trying to convey.
So, Diba, genuine question here from Bandit Daz, and I ask it genuinely as well. Do Iranians want to be called Persians again? Could there be actually a national name change on the cards, or not?
No, Iran has always been the name. It's only has always been a name for thousands of years. Persian was the reference in English, and our king about 8 years ago corrected it to Iran.
Okay. Well, thank you.
And
for
if you look at
clarifying.
our literature, Iranian literature, it is actually called Iran. We refers to as Iran. Yeah.
Well, there you go, Carly.
Diba, I want to ask you something that's happening right now. It's a developing story, and it's about the Iranian women's soccer team. So what we've saw is, obviously there is this sort of light at the end of the tunnel. It's not over yet. I don't think it's going to be over for a little while yet. But yesterday in the march, I heard you guys chanting, "Thank you, Donald Trump. Thank you, Bibi," as in Netanyahu. And you guys were holding up, pardon me, USA and Israeli flags, as well as pictures of Donald Trump and Bibi. And there was this genuine, thank you. It was a celebration around what's happening. And then we saw the Iranian soccer team here on the Gold Coast in Australia defy what they should have been doing, which was, saluting and singing along to the Iranian regime's national anthem, and they didn't. This is when they were playing against South Korea. And it was very noticed what that protest was. And then sure enough, Iranian state TV has called it a crime that's done under wartime. He's called for serious crackdowns and punishment for them. There's a lot of speculation around what will happen to these women when they return to Iran. Will they be tortured? Will they be raped? Are their family going to be punished? And I mean, the thing that I don't even want to say out loud is, could it be, execution? What's going on right now? And the reason I bring this up just before I hand it over to you is that in the West, women love to talk about oppression and feminism, and it's always an abstract kind of idea. We're talking about something in far recesses of people's minds. And for the very first time here on Australian soil, we saw genuine oppression, because when the Iranian soccer team came out to play against our Matildas, there was a definite shift in attitude, which was interpreted as, threats from the regime. You better sing and you better salute our national anthem. And the reason I ask you is that for the very first time, Australian women, well, Western women in general, are now seeing with their own eyes on our own soil genuine oppression of women by a regime that's on the other side of the world. Can you explain a little bit more about this story and what's likely to eventuate?
Look, thanks for bringing that up. That's the hottest topic at the moment in Australia for us Iranians, okay? And we are this is our own little rescue mission, because literally these little lionesses were out there. They refused to sing the regime's anthem. I'm not going to even refer to it as a national anthem. It's a regime anthem, okay? And if you look at a picture, you see what they're wearing. And with every time the regime sends us a team of sport team out, there is members of the security forces and intelligence services there to make sure they comply with all the rules, including the dress code. Yeah. Do you think that dress code really is appropriate for playing soccer? No. Do you think all those girls want to wear that? And I know a lot of feminists says women have to have the right to wear. Exactly, women got to have the right to wear what they want. I don't think those girls want to wear what they want, and in fact, that's why the Massa revolution was to exactly highlight that. To say that we also want the right. The women in our country have the right to choose what to wear. But this is well beyond that. This is immediate danger. The state TV has called them traitors during the wartime. They will go back. I know we cannot speculate, but we have seen enough of it to know that they're going to get oppressed And when we say prison in Australia, we only think about these 5-star places that they got a TV and air conditioning, everything. Prison in Iran is completely different picture, especially for female. They get subject to rape, gang rape, forced confession, and all that sorts of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I just give our Australian listeners a little bit more history around Iranian sports teams and protest, because what the women did, which is incredibly courageous, has a precedent with the men's Iranian soccer team at the World Cup in 2022. Where they did a very similar thing. They refused to sing the Iranian, and look, Diba, I'm going to follow your lead on this, the anthem, not the national anthem, the Islamic regime's anthem. They refused to sing that when they came out for their first match against England. But then, in the same way that the women suddenly were singing and indeed saluting the second match, the men also did the same thing back in 2022 when they came out against Wales. So they were clearly put under an enormous amount of internal pressure from the regime to not maintain that protest. Now, what does that pressure look like? Well, it's threats against family. And one of the considerations here, and Diba, maybe you can speak to this, is I would love to see Australia offer these women asylum. I think that's the least we can do under the circumstances. But also, any of those women that don't return home, their own family members who remain in Iran could very well be at risk.
Look, certainly the family would be under a lot of pressure if they're not going to be under immediate risk of imprisonment or whatever. Look, we're not in that luxurious position that to choose between good and bad. We got to choose between bad and worse. I'm sure those parents don't want the children to come back, because also the children can be used as a tool of oppression. So at least if we can save these few girls, even if at least there's some technicality and legality, and Ektag there put a good posting in Instagram, which I didn't get a chance to share with you in terms of technicality and legality of it. But we rather for them to be here in detention center, at least temporarily, until we find a solution, than going back to Iran.
Yeah.
And that is the truth.
Yeah. Can I just emphasize something? Because I mean, what we do with this podcast is we clip it up, and I want to make a segment out of this because I think it's important. I've been sharing this based on information that I've been able to look through, and I've heard it from direct testimony from Iranians themselves. But I think people, particularly in the West, when we talk about things as Westerners, people are like, oh, you know, it's not that bad. That's hyperbole. We don't know that to be true. You know, we have an Iranian with us right now. Can you speak to what it is like for a woman in Iran right now, today, and not just with morality police? You know, we see things about young girls who are married off, the way that women are treated, particularly the way their voice is heard and how little value is placed on their testimony. Because I want to hear it from you as an Iranian. What is it like for a woman? Because I think the women in the West, they need to actually hear it and understand this is not abstract. This is not some kind of made up thing. This is real. And this is what these women from the Iranian soccer team are going to face.
I was going to actually talk about more in detail about the mechanism of suppression, especially in this for Iranians. And to give a better understanding is why the Iranians, why they got to this point that they have to cheer and be happy for bombs to be dropped on their homeland.
Yeah.
Including people inside. But when you look at it in terms of women in there, women are like at the very beginning of a 1979 takeover, okay, straight away they started to divide and conquer the society. And the best thing was using Sharia law and divide women and put a hijab over a scarf over their head or hijab over their head and say, you guys now the other part of the society, which you are lower level, if you like. And again, I'm referring back to Sharia law because women has a lot less right than men. Okay, for example, if they want to leave the country, they have to get a consent from men in their family. If they have no right to the children when it comes to divorce. When it comes to inheritance, they only get 1/7, and all sorts of things. And even in the court, if you call it a court anyway, the whole system, women's word count half of the man. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah, I'll just emphasize that. Sorry, just because I think that's important, Diba. What you're saying is that when it comes to court testimony, if a woman is testifying, her word is equal to half of that of a man. So you need two women to testify to value a man's opinion.
Exactly. In a simple term or a very simplified way, you need two women to witness to one thing to be equal to one man.
Yeah. All right. This makes
the other thing is you got to understand, like, there's a big difference between normal dictatorship and theocratic and Islamic dictatorship. They run everything is black and white for them. Okay, you either part of them or you're not, and you consider as enemy of God. And when you're enemy of God, you're no longer a person. You are a subject to them. You are an infidel. Okay, they have all the right to do. You become an object. Okay, and this is part of the way they believe. And women, okay, they have the right to rape the woman. That is actually the religious thing. They have to do it. And one of the things you got to understand, that this is is well documented. I'm sorry, my language, if I'm saying this for you guys, it might be a bit disturbing. When it comes to execution of women, if they are virgin, because according to the belief they go to heaven, they have to rape the girl.
Wow.
That's really hard to hear, because it's like you hear that and you hear what happens in Afghanistan, you hear what happens on the other side of the world, and I don't think any woman in Australia has ever thought what that might look like in the practicality of it. So for any women watching this, if you firstly brought into the court, your voice counts for half of that of a man. And if you're found guilty and sentenced to death by execution, and you just so happen to be young, you will be raped. Like, I just cannot get past that. It's just so barbaric, and this is happening right now. This is real,
I want to come back to the men's soccer team, because they were fortunate enough to do what they did in 2022 when Iran was still, the Islamic regime was still trying to play nice with the international order. And as far as we're aware, when they got home, they reported increased surveillance and a few sort of curtailments of their civil liberties, but none of them were imprisoned for what they did, and none of them were executed. But of course, these Iranian women, these soccer players, have done this at this time where the Islamic regime is literally fighting for its survival, and the gloves are off. The gloves are completely off. They don't care about the approval of the international community anymore. This is about keeping their own internal unrest down. And unfortunately, you can't rule out the possibility that these young women become an example, become something that the Islamic regime decides is their moment to really put the fear of God into the Iranian people. To me, it is unconscionable. And I almost don't even want to conflate these two issues, but I think we have to bring it up because these are two big issues that are happening in Australia at the same time. It is unconscionable for the government on the one hand to be saying we need to bring back the ISIS brides and their children, we need to give them another chance, we need to repatriate them, and to apparently, maybe they're doing something behind the scenes that we can't see, we can't rule that out, but as best as we can tell, have every intention of sending these women and girls back to Iran, where I mean, Diba, you're right. We can't speculate on what will happen, but we all know what could happen. And I can't help but feel that that would be on our conscience.
Well, that option is on the table, and that's a very strong possibility. It's not a mere possibility that they could, because we know we've seen it. I know you guys probably have heard that they asked for the bullet money. I don't know if you heard about that or not, but like usually, no, okay. So what happened is when they execute and when they kill somebody, they ask from the parents for bullet money, and that's again part of the oppression. When it comes to girls, and I have personally heard, this is back in 1989 or something, it was that 1980, late 80s, that my uncle's neighbor daughter got executed, and they came and asked for the bullet money, and they said, okay, like let's say bullet cost this much, but because her dowry cost that much, you only have to pay this. It's like accounting, sort of like imagine what the family can go through. Now you're asking me, we don't have, like, if you be a parent of daughter's girl, do you prefer to be tortured, or you'll be sort of considering this possibility that your daughter can come in and from the airport will be taken, and once it's taken, there is so many different organizations, and so you cannot find the person. The possibility would be you get a phone call to come and pick up her body. I know these are soccer players, and now we're making a big noise about them and it costs them a lot more probably to do anything, but there's still a possibility. And this happened at the very large scale during the January massacre, and they asked families, imagine families are foraging through dead bodies that they just piled in. It's not a morgue, it's just like a factory structure, whatever you call it, and go through the torture of going through piles of bodies, and once you find a body, they take it at the front. It's just like a cashier. They say, you're going to pay us this much money. And they count the number of bullets. They say, okay, we shot 3 times, so you have to pay this much. These are the stories you guys need to hear, and you got to understand what Iranians are dealing with right now. This has always been the case. It hasn't been just starting in December 2025, but because of the sheer scale of it, it probably had drawn some attention, international attention to it.
So, Diba, sorry, Carly, I want to follow on from that. There was a wrestler, a well-known Iranian wrestler, who was executed in 2022 or 2023. He was in Iran, and he was involved in one of the protests, and he was arrested along with his 2 brothers. They were accused of killing an Iranian security guard. I'm trying to think of his name. I was reading about him today.
Navid Afkari.
Thank you. And in his case, they accused him of having stabbed an Islamic Republic guard to death in what he called a confession extracted by torture. So they They tortured him until he confessed to a crime he did not commit. And then on the strength of his confession alone, the International Red Cross and Red Crescent said that the evidence didn't match up. There was no real evidence. It was on the strength of this confession that they extracted through torture that they condemned him to death. There was international condemnation against Iran at that point in time. And then they literally went and executed him without even notifying the family of the execution. They broke Iranian law. They broke their own Islamic Republic law to execute him without due notice. They hanged him. Is that sort of even just that disregard for their own internal processes? I mean, it's one thing for them to be barbaric, but be following a barbaric set of rules that they've written. It's another thing for them to be entirely just a law unto themselves. What's the reality there?
Look, Navid Afghari case, I'll make a correction. He did not,
Thank
and
you.
his brothers did not commit any crime.
Hmm.
And there's so many cases of this, okay? But Navid brought into the highlight because, again, Iranians made a big noise about this, and finally it made it out to international sport committees, and there were some wrestlers in US that even spoke about him. And I don't know what you guys think about forced confession, but they put them into severe punishment, okay, until they confess. And some who survived this, they said by the end of it, after 2, 3, 4 days, you will say anything you want to tell them. I can explain to you one of the tortures, one of the very simple tortures, okay? And again, if you guys don't have the heart or got to hear this, please turn off the speaker on your computer. But they hang him upside down from the leg for a long period of time. Okay, once the blood rush in the head, they can feel a lot of pain. Sometimes they hang him from the hand, they put the hand behind the back and they're hanging from the hand. And imagine you do that for 5 minutes, but then imagine if you do that for hours and hours. These are some of the tortures that they do, okay? And this, I cannot speak about a lot of these things, what they do. Of course, we had boys who actually come and confess in recent uprising as well. They come and confess that they even been subject to rape as well. So it's not just girls; just boys get subject. They do anything to break the person, and they bring them out and they confess to whatever they want. The judiciary system in Iran is not independent body from the government. Judiciary system is part of the tool or the apparatus of the oppression.
Yeah,
Is not, especially when it comes to this kind of any political thing. Yes, there's a judiciary system for like civil matters, but when it comes to this matter, judiciary system is clearly part of the apparatus of oppression. The death sentence can hand out within few minutes. It doesn't deliberate for days and days and days, you know, and yeah, it's just, it is a cycle that they have to bring fear into people.
Diba,
They give hope and crush hope in people. Like, let's say, for us from outside, we run around and put post on X or whatever to try to save Navid, and at the end they kill him just to say, okay, you're powerless. They kill our hope.
Yeah.
For many years, we were very reactive because that's how they managed us mentally, to run us around and try to save one person and then crush our hope. That's why at this point we come to this conclusion that it's best for us to be proactive. And even though if we react to small things like this, we got to keep it in perspective. There's a bigger picture in place. I don't know if I can make sense or like that or not for you guys. Yeah.
Can I ask you, Diba, we've heard so many different reports, and a lot of Western outlets have tried to suppress this story or downplay it. But regards to the January massacre, I mean, I've heard estimations of 30,000, 40,000, some as high as 100,000 plus. Can you just summarize for us? I mean, this started, you know, the conversation is around economic breaking point. People are at the point where the Iranian dollar is worth nothing, and there's so many economic inequalities. But I think this is just a catalyst for what is something that's been brewing a long time. Can you just, for our audience, summarize what happened in January, what the slaughter looked like? We want to hear it from your words.
So it has started from late December, and it has started from the market or bazaar, what we call it. Okay, that's why a lot of media talk about it as economical uprising, but it very quickly broke into people rising against the regime, and they yell out what they want. And this time they knew what they want. They clearly called out the name, His Royal Highness Prince Reza Pahlavi. And that means nothing but that they want regime change. So even it started from the first day. Even on the first day, people called out his name. This was, of course, first they tried to not to react to it, but it grew bigger and bigger. Then His Royal Highness put out a message. And this should give you guys a good picture or perspective as how popular he is. He did not spend millions of dollars on promotions or whatever thing. He just put out one simple message on social media, Instagram and Twitter, and asked the Iranian people to come out on a peaceful protest on 7th, 8th of January, I think it was, on those 2 days. And at 8 p.m., people came out at 8 p.m. and the internet got shut down. We knew straight away, all the Iranians straight away, the shutdown came. We knew that it's going to be a slaughter. But to be honest with you, I don't know how many of us, I could not believe and I could not expect, because in all the previous uprising, there was killing, there was some sort of a slaughter, but not to this scale. It was unprecedented. It was a 2 weeks of complete blackout. Imagine people how they feel. They could not call, get any news from their family inside. And then the news broke out from Iran International news outlet. Apparently, the atrocity was so big that some of the members of the government, because they have a special access to certain SIM cards, that they can make phone calls. Everybody else calls were actually were blacked out. And he slowly started trickling images from one of the morgues in Tehran. I remember the news as I was watching it myself, like I was in a great shock. And there was the editor of Iran International. He was in tears when he was saying it, and because they have duties to report, what they see, and he at that moment estimated 12,000 people are dead based on number of bodies that he saw there. I don't know if you guys seen the images. There were piles and piles of people shot and in black body bags.
Yeah.
This was pretty well orchestrated. Looked like it was very well, programmed. But they vented out on people and they did not have mercy. Then slowly information started coming out, and we realized the scale of atrocity. That there was video you can actually see on YouTube as well. Probably, I think you can see that after they shot people and they used military grade machine guns and they used snipers and everything, they put snipers on top of buildings to shoot people. They came, once people dispersed, whoever could run, they run. Anyone injured, they finished them off.
Yeah.
On the street. One of the most disturbing one is a girl. And then they went to the hospital, pulled out the injured and finished off the injured in the hospital.
Yeah.
Those who were, I just actually saw a story today myself. Those who were injured and they went in hiding, they start finding them. But what the story I saw, there was one house that unwantedly became a refuge point for a few injured guys who could not come out, who couldn't. You cannot trust to go. Imagine you get injured and you cannot trust to go to hospital because you can get executed in the hospital. Mm-hmm. What they used, anything from machine gun to machete to knife to name it.
So, Diba, thank you for sharing. I'm wanting to move to a slightly different question before we close on a slightly happier story. But what do you understand to be the reality of the situation on the ground now? All we really know for a fact is that Iran are launching far fewer missiles, far fewer drones. There appear to be a lot less retaliations against neighbors and so forth from Iran. But whilst that might tell us what's happening in the air war, it really doesn't tell us much about the reality on the ground. And obviously, you don't need a ballistic missile to oppress people. You just need an AK-47. And unfortunately, the Islamic regime have those in abundance. What's the best information you have about the situation on the ground? Does the Islamic regime still have a grip on power? Could they topple without a ground invasion being necessary? Or is this a situation where you believe boots on the ground are going to be required?
Look, I'm not an analyst. This is my take, but this is from what I hear widespread from my people in the Iranian community. What is quite clear and apparent, the regime has collapsed. What you see is death rattle. And that's why it's so random. Okay? That's why they start sending missiles to all the neighboring countries. Okay, there is no command at the top level. The command is gone. I know they put a plan in place from since the 12-day war that they decentralized the command. I know that was the original plan that they had in place. That, like, in case something happened, that people at top level was gone, then they decentralize it, and then there are different areas can make their own decision. But what you can see is quite random. You see fracture between different people with power. Like you see the president say something, 1 hour later the head of judiciary says something, and the IRGC says something else, and then you see missiles send out. That's and you can quite clearly see the whole thing is fractured, right? And you could see signs of fracture before as well, but like now it's very apparent. And to me, it's just a death rattle from the thing. But what's on the ground? U.S. Army, U.S. Navy, and Israeli forces systematically are working through. First, of course, they shut down the air defense system, so it opens up their hand. Then they start depleting their missile capabilities. And I know from what I heard from the report from Brad Cooper, on the 4th day, the missile capacity reduced by 90% on the 4th day. So they should not have much missile. And it was 83% drone on the 4th day as well. So they would not have much drone and missile to send. And very soon, if not already, we will run out of it. So what is left at the end is toppling of the regime. Now, what they have started doing from past few days is to actually go one by one and hit all these areas, places which all these elements of suppression are they're there. Okay, like
these are the barracks.
So these are like not just army barracks. These are places where besieged forces are. These are where police stations are. These are like, remember, these people these people have. When I'm talking about people, it's the regime, they like to use people as how can I say? They like to hide between civilian. Okay, hide behind civilian. All right, but what we hear from and what we hear on the ground, because they were hit so badly. They started moving into civilian positions. They started taking the gear into sports centers and a school. And then once Israelis started hitting the sports centers, suddenly you see all the lefties come out. Oh my God, they're hitting all the sports center, and they're hitting the schools, and they're hitting this and they're hitting that. And the video comes out, and you see like all these IRGC and besieged forces are coming out of the sports center with the weapons in their hand. But at the end of the day, look like they are fracturing. They have no place to go to. They started hiding the weapons and the caches, like you're talking about the AK-47, whatever they have, in residential places, individual houses. But there is a positive side to that as well, if you like. Once they go and hide into residential places, they also become a sitting duck as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I know there's a big thing about boots on the ground. From this side, people in Australia and other Western countries, they don't like boots on the ground. If there is any boots on the ground, it will not be anything like Iraq or Afghanistan. It would be a special mission. And also, please remember, there is a bigger player. The main player in this game are the Iranian people.
Sure.
Main player in this game, and they want to have their destiny in their own hand. All they wanted was a level playing ground for these tools of oppression to be destroyed.
Yeah.
And the regime be decapitated so they can have the chance to actually take the country in their own hand. I hope that I answered your question.
Yeah, no,
Diba,
thank you. Yes.
Before we jumped on, you and I were talking about how you support One Nation, and Iranians are getting around Pauline Hanson. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Okay, the cat is out of the bag. Yeah. Look, we have experienced firsthand as Iranians for 47 years what Islamists can do when they take over. And as I mentioned to you earlier, and we are expressing our message when we come out to protest to show our respect to the country that we live in. This is our home. We care for this. The future of our children are here. So as the future of your children. And what we see, this big Trojan horse that has been sent inside the country needs to be controlled. And the two major parties in Australia seem to be too busy with their leader voting, population, whatever you want to call it, or too busy with their own narratives to be able to hear us or hear the silenced majority. And this is where platforms like yours come really handy, really good to have platforms like yours, because you guys are reaching out at the grassroots level and reach out to the silenced majority. And this silenced majority are average Joe blokes, that they go to work, they come back, they go watch footies, take their kids to sport and things like that, and really don't have time to get involved in these things. And they trust the politicians to take care of the country, but our politicians has failed us. And Pauline Hanson these days seem to have the right message to protect this country, and she shows genuine concern about the status of the country.
So Diba, I really appreciate the comments that you've made now a couple of times about how you consider yourself an Australian. It was important to you that flags of the host country would be represented. You had teams cleaning up after you because you don't want to be a nuisance. These are all exactly the kinds of things that I want to hear from any Australian. There are plenty of Australians who were born here that don't have enough self-respect to have the same attitude as what you're expressing there. But I do feel like there's a change in the air, and this is an entirely separate topic. I'm going to touch on this very briefly and then come back to Pauline Hanson. One of the things that I observed during the COVID lockdowns, and of course people have their own views on that, that's fine. There were two groups of people that I felt were overrepresented as a percentage of the population. One was Christians, active evangelical Bible-believing Christians. The other one was first and second generation immigrants. They were very much overrepresented amongst our numbers. And I sensed it was because of what you just expressed there, where in your case, you've seen for 47 years the reality of what it can be like. And in many ways, I think Australians, we've had it too good for too long. However, I was at the launch of the Farrah campaign. So obviously there's a Farrah by-election on right now, and One Nation just launched their candidate on Saturday. I was there. I want to play a video, and we don't have to finish straight away after this video, but I just felt that this would be something nice to finish on. They opened with singing the Australian national anthem. And I just want to play this and actually just let it play through. Because Diba, again, you mentioned that you've, as an organizer, you've made sure the Australian national anthem is played as a part of the marches that you've been facilitating. There were about 600 people in this room. And can I just really encourage you, wherever you're listening, if you can, crank the audio, crank the sound up, and just have a listen. Young and free. I'll be the first to admit that we flubbed the ending there a little bit.
I was gonna say the ending, guys, we kind of lost it there.
Yeah, the ending got a bit wonky, but it was so wonderful to be in a room. And obviously these people aren't singers. I'm not a singer. But 600 voices in that room really singing the national anthem, singing young and free. No one had to ask. No one had to debate Scott Morrison's change to make it one and free. No, we sang young and free. And it was a beautiful thing. And Diba, what is it that you're seeing that one has sort of made you think that One Nation might be good? But actually, probably the more important question, what is it that you see about Australia? What is it that you would love to see us recapture and protect and keep a hold of before it's too late?
Wow, where to begin with? For me personally, the day that Pauline Hanson, where the Australian flag went to the parliament and she got kicked out, was breaking point.
Yeah.
Yeah. What? Look, I lived in Canberra for a few years. I've been to the War Memorial so many times.
Take your time, Diba.
Excuse, guys.
That's okay.
I think if anyone doubted that you're a real Australian, I think you've just put all the doubts to rest, mate. That's how every Australian ought to respond when we look at the sacrifices that have been made. I think you're a true blue Aussie, mate. I think that's what I think.
Thank you. We owe it to those fallen soldiers. We really owe it to those fallen soldiers. They didn't die for us to. They died for the freedom and for democracy in this country. They made the ultimate sacrifice.
And I think, unfortunately, there's too much distance between their sacrifice and the privilege that many Aussies currently have. And I think, Diba, as I mentioned during the march, the more we hear the voices of Iranians, the more it will become apparent to Aussies that this isn't just a war. It's not just about oil. It's not just about Trump and Israel and Palestine. This is honestly an ideological war. We are up against something far more sinister, and Iranians know it better than most, as much as the Afghanis and the Syrians and the Iraqis. This oppressive ideology and the cancer that it can become. You guys have been trying to sound the alarm for a while now, and then as we've mentioned before, we currently have 2 sitting senators who sit there and will champion the Iranian Islamic regime, Marine Faruqi and Fatima Payman. Can you just let us know, as an Iranian, when you hear these two women speak, and I point out the fact that they're women, knowing full well now that you've told us what happens to women in Iran, and we know what happens to women in Afghanistan, of which Payman is currently an Afghani citizen. What do you see when you see these two women speak? I mean, I can't understand it.
I don't know how they got voted to begin with. Who voted for them to make it to the parliament, let alone trying to make sense of what they say. Marine Faruqi, I don't know much about her except that I know she's from Pakistan and she doesn't know difference between race and religion. That's why when Pauline Hanson went to Parliament and started arguing against burqa, she called her a racist. Islam is not a race, it's a religion. Big news for her, I think. But for me, the biggest surprise is Fatima Payman. She's an Afghan. She sees what's happening in Afghanistan as we speak.
Yeah.
How much right her sisters have. And what is she going on about? And that smirk that she has on her face is the most annoying smirk. It's exactly the same smirk that we see on the Islamic regime members.
Yeah. Oh, Diba, I thank you so much for your time, because I know it's such a heavy topic. And I mean, I feel like we could talk for hours. But I mean, if there's one thing, we try not end the podcast on such a sad note, but I will say this, any protests or any marches that you have popping up, tell me and I'll share them with the Oddies. And I will say this, being there yesterday, I felt so much love in the crowd. And I said that's such a wanky way of saying it. I'm trying to think of a better word, but it felt so connected and everyone was so joyous, even though knowing what you guys are facing and knowing what's happening back home. Seeing you guys all together and celebrating not just being Iranian, but also being Australian. And that's more than we've seen from any protest that we've had, whether it's the pro-Palestinian march, the LGBT, the Aboriginal Invasion Day protests. I mean, what I saw yesterday, the pride that you guys have for this country was just so refreshing. And I felt really touched as an Aussie to think that, maybe our own people don't see it, but, the Iranians still love this country and are still ready to fight for it.
Yeah. Diba, before I let you answer that, I look forward to the day when I get the chance to shake your hand in person. I look forward to the day when I get to meet you. And honestly, I just want to thank you for coming to this country. I want to thank you for continuing the legacy of people that come to this country and make it a better place. We talk a lot about immigration in this country at the moment. There's a lot of people who are against all immigration. There are a lot of people who just want whoever wants to come in. I'm a big believer in getting the incentives right, and getting the incentives right is about getting good quality people. And that means people who want to become Australians, people who want to earn, pay their own way, pull their own weight, make this country a better place than it was before. And I welcome with open arms everyone that wants to do that. And so thank you for coming to Australia. Thank you for bringing your family. Thank you for becoming an Australian. And thank you for carrying on that legacy of courage that obviously Iranians have, but also the best of Australians. Maybe we've lost it a little bit today, I fear, but in our history, in our heritage, the best of Australia is filled with courage and a willingness to stand up for what's right. And you're carrying that on. So all I want to say to you in closing is before we let you go is just thank you. Thank you so much. And I hope to shake your hand someday. Thanks for having us. Yeah. And thanks for the platform. I hope we can continue with this. I know this is not going to end with the liberation of Iran. We got a lot of cleanup to do in Australia, and we have to clean up this Trojan horse. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Diba. It was wonderful to be able to have a full chat to you today, and I'm sure I'll see you in the coming weeks at another protest. And I'll
Sure.
encourage everyone to come and join along.
Yeah, every protest you see more and more Aussies joining us. Please come and join us. And more Israelis, they feel so comfortable and welcome. And that's what we want, to people feel welcome to join us, feel safe. And we hope that we cause minimal disturbance to all those immediate businesses within surrounding, and we do our best to call minimal disturbance while we practice our right to speak. Yeah.
Thank you
Amazing.
so
Diba,
much,
thank you
Diba.
so much.
Thank you.
And I know everyone in the chat has been truly touched to hear from you today. So thank you so much. And
Thank you.
yeah, we'll catch up in some
Sorry, I
time
couldn't
down
hold
the
my
track to see
emotion,
what's
you know.
going on. Yeah. Oh, it's when it comes to things like this, I don't want you to hold it back. I think raw emotion's important. You know, we're not politicians, and this isn't a polished podcast, so don't worry.
Yeah, that's it. That's what I like it.
Diba,
All right,
thank you
Diba,
so much.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll talk
Have a good night,
soon.
guys. And thank you to
Bye.
all your audience. Love you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
All right.
Oh, wow.
Well, look, our time's up, and I know we're leaving people on a bit of a heavy moment, but honestly, it was worth it. Honestly, sometimes you just got to look the ugly in the face, and I don't mean Diba's ugly. I mean sometimes you got to look ugly stuff, ugly realities in the face, and you know, I think that moment where he just had to mention the war memorial, and clearly that just means so much to him, and I think because I was watching that unfold, the same as all of you were, and I realized, of course, for him, the sacrifice that he sees represented in that war memorial is so visceral and so real, because he's lost people that he knows. He mentioned his neighbor's daughter executed back in, I think it was the 80s, you know, and then obviously friends and possibly relatives. I don't know the details of his story, but he knows people who have given their lives in the hope of freedom for Iran. And so when he walks through that memorial in Australia, sure, it's Australia. It was another time. It was a different theater, blah, blah, all of that. The sacrifice, I think, is very real for him, and he understands that cost. I think, honestly, a lot more than most Australians, probably more than I do. You know, like, I think that's the reality of that response that we saw from him in that moment.
I look, the Iranian soccer team, I think this story is going to be way bigger than anyone realizes, not just because of the issue itself, but for the flow and effect that this represents. I mean, for 2.5 years, we've had the pro-Palestinian marches, and now you have, I mentioned this before, genuine oppression on our soil in front of our eyes. You're seeing the regime puppet hand come in and pressure them to show respect to the anthem. I've noticed quite a lot of people are genuinely terrified for these women, and you know, I'm not too sure how many people are on the soccer team, but to see, you always have to have a catalyst. You always have to have something go first. And I mean, when we talk about the slaughter in January and that 30,000 to 100,000 estimation, I think the problem with that is it's so gargantuan. It's so big. It's too hard for an Australian who's never even been exposed to this or seen this to kind of understand what that means. But seeing 12 or whatever it is, 20 soccer players on a field, bowing to this oppressive regime, knowing full well that their likelihood is they will be tortured and raped, and if not worse. I think for the very first time, the gravity of that has truly landed in the laps of Australians. And
I agree, but I think there's another layer of savagery there, where a regime will turn around and say, not only will we end your life, we are going to degrade and humiliate you in the worst ways imaginable before ending your life. It's not enough that we're taking from you everything you are and everything that you could have been. We will degrade what you are before we then kill you. And that speaks to a psyche that is alien to me. I have no, if I see something in suffering, I want to at least ease the suffering. Maybe something, no, not every situation can be saved, but if I see a bad situation, I at least want to make it less bad than what it is. But these people are actively making these situations bad and then saying, hang on, I just thought of a way we could make this even worse. And this is alien. This is incomprehensible. Genuinely, I don't use this word lightly. This is incomprehensible. I cannot comprehend how you do that to another human being.
Well, I mean, we know that this is history, right? This is the history of humanity. I mean, something I've noticed, and I've talked about this. I'm trying to cheer this up, but
sorry, I'm feeling the weight of this, but honestly, I think we kind of need to sit with it. I think we have to let it be what it is.
So I mentioned a little while ago, I was talking about how we use words like dictator and Nazi and all these words now as pejoratives, but they've been used so much that they no longer have the weight and the gravitational pull that they should. Every time someone in the West calls Donald Trump a dictator, I just grow more and more enraged because, you can dislike him. I'm not trying to convince you to like Trump one way or another, but to call him a dictator when we actually have current dictators, I mean, before Khomeini was taken out, he is the example of one of the most barbaric modern dictators in history, and yet it doesn't seem to. There's something about this abstraction, and I don't know what this means or how to put this into words, but because it's on the other side of the world and they can't see it with their own eyes and they're not personally experiencing it, it becomes a lot easier to sort of justify. I've been working on this series, and I'm calling it, for the sake of trying to get people into watching it, the Big Dick series. And I'm using that pun with intention, right? Because when it comes to social media, if we go in with the heaviness of today's podcast, people just swipe away, right? Yeah. I think people are so exhausted from so many horrible things all happening at once, and post-pandemic as well. But in this series, this Big Dick series, a dick is dictators in context, right? And I've created something where I'm representing dictators throughout history, both modern and, historical, all the way back to Roman times and pharaohs, and trying to present it in a way that when you hear this story, it could be from 1,000 years ago, it could be for 50 years ago, it could be last week with the Ayatollah. These stories are not new. The story keeps getting retold, and we keep forgetting the lesson, let alone repeating it. And, I've been researching some of the dictators, and I want to represent it in a way that's like, okay, if you want to talk dictators, let's do it, but let's all learn this together. Let's understand what that word actually means. And, as awful as it is what's happening with the soccer team, I honestly see this as like the first catalyst in a while that's going to make people truly pay attention.
Yeah. And I would liken it, and this is the comparison isn't literal. Don't get mad at me. But in terms of the impact on the public, there's elements of Zoe Bueller. You remember Zoe was the young pregnant mum who got arrested in her pajamas by the police during the COVID lockdowns. And that sort of thing had happened already. But for some reason, that was caught on camera, that went viral. The moment in which it arrived, the person that was embodied in it, the zeitgeist hit, and public opinion shifted massively. And when it comes to the protests, because I was involved in all of them right from the very start, so I saw the whole progression. There's before Zoe and there's after Zoe, and those two realities were very, very different. Yeah. The amount of public support that we had, the amount of people willing to show up, take a risk, and join us and support us was radically different after Zoe. And I think that this soccer team is going to have a similar effect on this public opinion inside Australia, especially if Albo doesn't step in. And I hope he does, but especially if he does not step in, this will be a seminal moment. And I could foresee a situation where this actually takes down Albo as Prime Minister.
I was about to say, if he doesn't step in, and look, last time I checked, this story is developing, so it may have changed in the last 2 hours.
And can I say before you finish your point, if they were working on something, they would not tell us.
Yeah.
Because the Iranian regime have handlers in there. They want them to know nothing. Yeah. They know nothing, and then all of a sudden it's done and they don't get the chance to intervene. So it's entirely possible that they are working on some kind of an intervention. We don't know, and we won't know until after it's happened.
Yeah, so that just with what you said, we don't know. But if it does come to a point where Albo and Penny Wong and Tony Burke don't intervene and these women return to Iran and we find out the unimaginable and the unspeakable, this is the end of Albanese. This is done.
100%. And so it should be.
I'm not trying to minimize this, but what that female soccer team means for Australians right now is I honestly do believe this could be one of those catalysts for the left and the right to reconnect and realize that, hang on a minute, we're on the same team. We have different ways of wanting to achieve the same outcome. But, you know, there was a word, it just popped up in the chat, and I wanted to talk to Diba about this, and maybe we can get him back to talk about it later. But Islamophobia, the barbarity and the sickness and the evilness of the Islamic regime is so sinister that we had to invent a word so we don't have to speak about it. And that word, Islamophobia, that's the entire point of it. It's a modern word. It was invented to say, you know, and Diba made this point to me, and I've heard this point a few times now. Phobia means irrational. You have an irrational fear of a spider. You have an irrational fear of heights. This is not irrational. We have almost 93 million Iranians who have seen this firsthand. We've had, I can't remember what the population is of Afghanistan or of Syria or of Iraq. They have seen this. They know what this evil is. And it's not a phobia. This is a genuine fear. And in the West, we have to come up with a new word to be able to explain it away and go, oh, no, we can't talk about that. That's Islamophobic. And I ask you guys to push back on that word every time you hear it, because this is not a religion. This is an ideology. And you've heard of, we've spoken about this at length before, the black and red alliance. This is Marxist thinking with Islamic fundamentalist thinking. They've come together. They serve the same purpose. Ultimately, they want the different goals to achieve different goals. But what we're seeing here, and I get really mad when I see the chat when people go, oh, this is Bibi Netanyahu, this is Mossad, this is CIA, this is Trump. I'm like, if that makes it easier for you to understand the gravity of what's going on, fine, right? Like, you're too far gone. I can't fix you. I can't help you. To be able to sit there and see so many millions of people like be slaughtered by their own government and say that this is not our problem, and then know full well it is here on our shores in mosques across Sydney and Melbourne where they were mourning Khamenei, where we've had the Bondi shooting, where we have had, I said this last week, we've had the biggest number of exports to ISIS aside from Syria themselves. This is our freaking problem. This is here.
So we're getting up another head of steam, and we're going to go for another hour if we're not careful. I need sleep. I need to go to bed. What I will say, just to round out your point, I am not arachnophobic, but if I see a white tail in my house, it's going to die, right? Not because I have an irrational fear of white tails, because I have a rational awareness of the damage they could cause to me or my kids, right? It's not irrational to want to remove a threat. So, yeah, Islamophobia, no, I'm sorry. Once someone says death to, I don't care what's on the end of that sentence. It doesn't matter to me. If your solution is death to somebody else, then I don't want you anywhere near me, my country, my kids, my future. You know, you can go practice that somewhere else. It doesn't matter to me what the specifics are. Okay.
All right,
we need to be shameless thrifters. We can't finish the show. Oh, earlier I saw someone in the comments say that there had not been a tangent time. There was most definitely a tangent time. I remember because I did 3 zhuzh hands around and around and annoyed you all for a bit of extra time. All right,
you gotta start tap dancing.
We definitely did. I used to do tap dancing back in a former life. So no, we definitely did a tangent time. Thank you very much. We need to finish the show. Coffee. Put your fingers.
Yeah, guys, if you want to support the show, you can shout us a coffee. You can join and become a member. You get access to the Discord. G has spent all afternoon in there setting up the Producers Club. So there's 3 different tiers. If you like what Topher and I are doing, you want to support the show, you want us to get more people on like Diba and build it up, God knows we'd love to. You can support us there. And if you want to be a producer where you have direct access to me and Topher, you can bring stories to our attention and you can tell us what you want us to include in the program. Obviously, pardon me, on Wednesday is when we do the long form podcast. So you guys get to have a hand in that. But if you value things, if you want to reach out to us, that is how you do it, through Ko-fi.
Yep. Head over to topherfield.com. There is 1 week to go before the masterclass begins. Thank you to whomever it was that said they'd got the masterclass. There's a bunch of people obviously who've gotten the masterclass. So thank you to Steph for being one of them. Head over to topherfield.com and get that. It starts on Thursday of next week, and the early bird special ends when it starts. So you've got a week to get the early bird, and then the prices will go up to their normal prices. thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to Diba and giving him lots of love.
Diba.
I think he deserves it. Diba, sorry. Thank you. It's the Diba and giving him lots of love. And we will have him back on as that story develops. Sadly, that's not a story that's going away anytime soon, but I just hope that it becomes a story of renewal and reconstruction rather than a story of rebellion and revolution. That's the hope.
I do, just to leave you guys on a positive note, I don't know what it is. Call it women's intuition, call it stupidity, I don't know. But I do have this genuine sense that there's change in the air. I felt it at the protest. I mentioned that it was the Grand Prix. It was a AFL match as well as Moomba. There's a lot of people in the CBD, a lot of people out. It was a good day. It was a sunny day. It was warm. There was just something in the air. I can't tell you what it was. I can't articulate quite what I was witnessing, but it felt like Melbourne was trying to grow back after a really cold winter. I didn't see any antagonizers in the crowd. There was no one pushing back. There was a lot of smiles. So, I mean, it might be too early to call it, but I think change is definitely in the air.
Yeah. Alrighty, guys. Much
All
love.
right, guys. Thank you so
Thanks
much
for joining us. See you Wednesday.
Thank you for listening to Diba, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.